Friends, the peace of the Christ child be with you. A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem. Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising and have come to do him homage. When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes, the people, he inquired them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written through the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people, Israel. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, give me word that I too may go and do him homage. After their audience with the king, they set out, and behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage, and then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. This is the good news regarding events around the birth of our brother Jesus. Praise to you, Jesus Christ. Have a seat. Well, here we are at the start of another new year, and what a year it has been. Sometimes when I stop and think of all the ways that the world has changed in just a year, it makes my head spin. There are a lot of things that make my head spin. I must stand here some days just going like this. But let's set aside politics and world affairs for just a minute. Our world is on this technological fast track, and at some point, you and I, well, maybe not that, but you and I will be left behind, right? But I've also come to realize that nobody really cares. When we say, I don't understand, I can't get this. The world does not care that QR codes mean that some seniors will miss out on their purchases or their social engagements or not be able to pay their bills because they don't know what to do with that little black square, right? The world does not care that we want to talk to a real doctor and not get like an AI evaluation of our health, or that one more update to our cell phones means another week of adjusting to the changes on the app page. I've had to let go of the illusion that I can keep up and the illusion that anyone cares when I can't. Honestly. Our gospel reading today highlights those moments in our lives when a truth becomes manifested, when the nickel drops in our brain, when we have those aha moments, and suddenly we see the situation in our world a little differently. We tend to think of the Magi sighting of a star as an epiphany moment. We saw his star, this king of the Judeans, and have come to worship him. Epiphany moments, happen through awareness of signs and wonders. those supernatural events or encounters that serve as like a divine indicator, some sort of messenger to us. Jesus said, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe. He knew that it's our nature to assign meaning to things that we can't explain. The Magi, who were also thought to be astronomers, understood the constellations in the sky, but they missed an accurate read on Herod. Lost and confused, they made their way quite vulnerable to a known narcissistic tyrant. Asking King Herod about the newborn king of Judea was like lighting a match to his well-gassed ego. While the Magi sought to pay homage, King Herod sought to kill the competition. And so an angel appeared to them in what we would call a sign of the time. That is a wisdom that comes from testing the temperature in the room, from being aware of what's going on around you, from adapting to new realities. Sometimes, as Catholics, we're a little reluctant to do that. Taking on new information feels to the institution like we're caving into culture wars, like we're dabbling in relativism, that we are compromising the tenets of our faith, which are to many Catholics carved in stone. And yet the Magi heard and understood that Herod was not to be trusted. And so they changed their plans and returned by another route, circumventing Herod, who waited the news on the specific location of Jesus. Sometimes our epiphanies enlighten us, and sometimes they burst our bubbles. Shauna LaFour, who turned 67 this past year, put it this way. When I turned 67, I sat in my favorite chair and I looked back at my life and I whispered to myself, so this is the beginning of the final stretch. And slowly the truths that I had avoided all my life began to surface. Aging, she says, doesn't hurt your body first. It hurts your illusions. We see that in our first reading. You know, which one of us, when we're down and out, doesn't dream of a day when those who have hurt us get what they have coming to them? And we are restored to our rightful positions. And so the writer in Isaiah begins in the chapter before saying that justice is far from us and righteousness does not reach us. We look for light, but it's all darkness. We walk in deep shadows. The social political context for these verses sounds vaguely familiar. Treaties were made between powerful rulers demanding absolute loyalty. Taxation and military support pressuring Judah towards idolatry and unjust taxation. The justice system was corrupt, and violence and deceit flourished. Refugees fled outlying towns and poured into Jerusalem, creating controversy and chaos. Verse 1 of chapter 59 confronts the populace tempted to accuse God of negligence. Why has Yahweh failed to deliver us? Isaiah reverses the charge. God's capacity is intact. Judah's sin blocked the covenant pipeline. But take heart, he continues in chapter 60. See, darkness covers the earth and thick clouds cover the people, but upon you God shines. And over you appears God's glory. Nations shall walk by your light and kings by your shining radiance. Then you shall be radiant at what you see. Your heart shall throb and overflow, for the riches of the sea shall be emptied out before you. The wealth of nations will be brought to you. Redemption. It's like waking up from a bad dream, isn't it? Those of us who have survived 2025 might wonder, when will we wake up from this bad dream? But it didn't really happen that way for Judea, did it? Hindsight is always 2020, but we only need to consider the recent wars between Palestine and Israel to know that this region of our world has been plagued by atrocities. We, like the Magi, are called to some hard realities, called to surrender our illusions and to find a way to adapt. After almost 2 centuries of gatherings, Shiloh United Methodist Church in Mahomet has had to close its doors. They were established in 1852 with an average attendance over the years numbering about 100 people. But in recent years, those numbers have dwindled, and the congregation has had to face with what many churches are struggling to acknowledge: glory days are over. People are not returning to the pews. And so as we read the signs of the times, as we let go of some of our illusions and adapt to new realities, what are the different routes we, like the Magi, might consider? How will we encounter those epiphany moments throughout the year? Perhaps we, like the Magi, will find them where we least expect them. And for Judeans at that time to acknowledge that it was Magi and not the followers of the laws of Moses who were given direct wisdom from God, that too was unexpected. What God spoke through a natural phenomena to these foreign, heathen, non-Jews from Baghdad, and not through a prophet or teacher or ancient text to the Hebrew people, was outside of their understanding of the unique status they had as God's chosen people. Will we be willing to broaden our horizons, to seek wisdom in non-traditional venues, through non-traditional voices? We'll be able to turn the page. Will we remain alert and attentive to our surroundings? I shared with you last week a growing awareness that I have of the number of adult children estranged from their parents. This week I read an article that spoke of another trend: room sharing. Elderly men and women who find themselves rattling around in a big empty house with extra rooms are renting rooms to young people in need of affordable housing. And I thought, here we have seniors whose own children, for whatever reason, have left them alone, taking in the children of other parents who, for whatever reason, are not housing their own children. The signs of the times. The two driving forces in this trend are the rising housing costs and social isolation, loneliness. From their first conversation, Nellie Goodwin knew that she and Sarah would make great roommates. Nellie's 77 and recently widowed, and she appreciates Sarah's sunny personality and said it's a balm to her. Sarah, who doesn't make a whole lot of money as a 25-year-old technical writer, said the money Nellie charges for rent puts their pricey community within reach. The half century between their ages doesn't faze either of them. As I drove to the hospital to visit one of our members this week, I sat at the stoplight at Vine in Maine. I sat there and I observed 3 or 4 women that I recognize in the turn lane who are my age. And I realized they're sitting in their cars alone. They're living out the last years of their lives alone. All of them single, widowed, or divorced. It's something you don't realize when you are young. that most women will outlive men and finish their time on earth living alone. It was an epiphany moment and confirming of what God has already been bringing to my attention. In a conversation with other women pastors in our community, we have begun to reimagine church. If people are not flooding to our churches to sit in our pews on Sundays, then what does it mean to be a successful pastor? What does that look like? How do we let go of the illusions regarding our traditional churches? How do we pay attention to the signs of the times and determine the direction we are being called to go? For Shauna LaFour, she recognized that her children were not going to save her from loneliness. And so she needed to create her own joy. Money and financial independence would determine the dignity with which she lived into old age, so she increased her savings. Illness doesn't discriminate, so Shauna contended, but it respects those who take responsibility for themselves. So she focused on some lifestyle changes. With each epiphany, we are tasked with a response. The Magi brought gifts to the newborn king. What are the gifts that you are being called to offer? I've been listening to what I've been hearing regarding social isolation, especially among our aged, coupled with the call to extend cherished belonging to people like the Magi, who are not welcome in the usual purview of the church. I think of the many seekers who talked with us at the farmers market, like Market Sarah, with their own stories of disillusionment and desires for cherished belonging. I think of the aging doctor who came to Mass one day to donate his deceased wife's books that fell apart in our arms. I think of the brother of one of our members who was hospitalized this week and never heard from his adult children. I think of the aging friend of many of us, widowed and now grieving the death of her daughter. Or the friend of mine who grew up with us at St. Pat's who has just been diagnosed with breast cancer and has been no contacted by her mother and sister. Or the hungry people who are fed through our food pantry, or the Afro-Latino man who came to us because his home burned down this year, or the family that couldn't come together to bury their mother, and so they came here, and we honored her together. We may not be the booming Catholic community in Champaign-Urbana, but we can be a place where people feel cherished. We need to read the signs of the times and look where we least expect it to see what God is saying to us and where God is directing us to go. What are you seeing and hearing? What illusions do you need to let go of? Where do you envision God leading us in the next year? Let us together be mindful, prayerful, and discerning as we seek out the Christ child in 2026. May God bless our earnest efforts to serve God's people in the coming year. Amen.